So in this video, I'm going to talk about qualitative dissertation, a little bit more about time frame for planning yourself throughout the year, and also about what to do with your studies once you've found them. So again, I made a big folder to keep myself organized with dividers, and I kept my studies in here, the different ones that I found that were relevant to my topic of interest, and I kept dividers, and I printed off like different things that help with analysis, other studies that I looked at. I used the CASP tools for the critical appraisal, so I kept those in here, and also evaluation tools that I'd found. Something that's important, so every time you meet with your dissertation supervisor, it's a really good idea. So you go in with a notebook and you go in with any questions and you write down some of the stuff you've been talking about, or if your supervisor's okay with it, sometimes you can record the meeting as well. And then when I got home, I would have a look at those notes that I'd made or listen to the recording again. And I would go through and write action points in an email. So I covered some of this up. So I'd look at some of the stuff we spoke about that I need to think about for changes for the next time that we meet. And this really helped me keep on track as well as planning out my time frame. So anything we discussed about, what are some of the things that you need to look at or focus on for next time, little changes you need to make, or sometimes big changes. And I kind of would also write down how many words I was at this point. You kind of want to expect to go way over the word count and then cut back. So that kind of helped me. And then every meeting I would do this, every meeting that I had with my supervisor, and every so many meetings I would also print out a version of my dissertation. So I had like a paper copy because I was super paranoid that the computer would just crash. But that's also good sometimes to look at on paper. Some of the other things were like different studies that I found that helped with some of the tools or helped with some of the sections of the dissertation. I also used the library, so I went and took loads of notes, found some good books. I really recommend having some books with you to help with how to do some of the sections, help with looking at research and how to write up your dissertation. And this is all separate to like the lectures that we had. And then in the back, I decided to keep all the studies that I originally found from the bigger pool of them, because this is how I was kind of looking at. So that's all really good to keep you organized, kind of like keep on track of everything. So then let me talk about what you do when you've found your studies. So you've used the Prisma tool, and you've broken down to which studies that you want to do. So I'll just show you one of these as an example. So these were the different studies that I'd found, and I'll show you this one. So again, I'm a paper person, so I personally printed out the studies. I'd then go through with a highlighter and pen and make notes, highlight different things that were important, jumped out to me, areas where I thought the authors introduced bias potentially, different themes that jumped out, kind of the critical points of what they were talking about. And sort of looking at different aspects of what relates to my research question. Also looking at ethics, looking at where they might have made assumptions and where they've used evidence, and also particularly looking at where they've made comparisons and how that might relate to some of the other studies and the comparisons that those authors have made. So again, this can be really overwhelming for people. So I use different colour for different parts that I was looking at within the papers. And I also used the reference list when I was originally searching for papers. So maybe I found one, but maybe it was too short, or it hadn't been peer reviewed, for example, or they hadn't gained ethics. There's different reasons why. And then you can use this section sometimes like as a springboard onto different studies that might be good, might be useful. So I did that for all of my studies for my dissertation. Once you've done that, what I did personally was I got a blank sheet of paper, and on this paper I basically condensed down, I boiled down the different findings that I had picked up from the study, and kind of you'll do this for all of your studies that you've chosen, and so then you'll have like you basically boil it down and draw it all together. And so this is like a small snapshot of everything here that you've picked up that's important, or that's jumped out to you, and kind of you start to see different things that are important in there. And so you do this for each of your studies, and then you line all of these condensed versions up, and you can kind of start to see patterns with the various studies. So that's what I did, sort of start me off, because a lot of the time people will find the papers and then they'll be like, oh, I'm stuck now, I don't know what happens next. So that's a really good thing to do. In terms of time frame, so again, I did a 4-year master's degree, and so in the 4th year was when we were doing our dissertation. So 2 weeks before we started back for the final year, I made amendments from the feedback session I'd done late in the previous year. Used that Prisma chart which I showed you to help narrow down and start the critiquing. So I started with 11 studies and all of them are qualitative. So here you need to pay attention to what your word count is for the dissertation, because too many studies and you just won't have the word count to help you get through it. I personally ended up with 4 final studies. So 4 weeks after starting final year, I had made a goal for myself to make sure the critical appraisal of the papers were complete. And by this point you will have been assigned a dissertation supervisor. So I made sure to book in that first meeting with the supervisor. And again, make sure you maximize the use of the supervisor, because they are just font of knowledge. And you might find that you're limited to the number of times you can meet with them. So make sure you use absolutely all of those meetings. 4 weeks after this, I had a goal to make sure my findings and thematic analysis was complete. 2 weeks later, after that, I had another dissertation meeting with my supervisor. A week after that, I had a goal to make sure my critical analysis and limitations were complete. A week after that, I had another dissertation meeting. And the meetings don't have to take long. Sometimes you might have a couple of questions. Sometimes it's just a check-in to make sure, are you on track? Are you still plugging away at it? Or have you absolutely hit that brick wall and you haven't done anything and you keep opening your computer and staring or procrastinating? So it's also good for like a mental little pick-me-up as well. Where do we get to? And then I'd set a goal for my dissemination of findings to be complete and my rough draft to be complete the day before we broke up for Christmas. So I wanted to make sure that the bulk of that sort of work was done in the first half of the year, because I knew from looking at my list of when all my assignments were due in, this was for third year, but I knew from looking at that it was just going to be loggerheads of stuff being due in after Christmas and in that period. And so if you get the bulk of this done when there's just a lot of lectures happening, like launches of the modules, it will really save you in the end. The first week back from Christmas, I sent the rough draft of my dissertation to my supervisor. A week later, I had a meeting with them, and then every 2 to 3 to 4 weeks, or as required, I would book an appointment with the supervisor. I also used a working deadline in my head to make sure that I was organised and ready ahead of time, because I know those last slog bits towards the end, they tend to be really quite slow. The editing part can be really hard. I personally find it quite difficult because it's rereading your own writing, and sometimes your brain switches off because you're just reading what you've read 100 times. So I tried to make the deadline in my head 4 weeks earlier, and then our submission was in May, beginning of May. So that time frame really worked well for getting everything done and organised in time, so that you don't reach a pinch point where you're at the beginning of your dissertation and all your other modules have stuff due. I hope you like the video, and see you next time.